So Tom meets every week with the fellow that runs the Army Corps of Engineers in the region. He lives in Anchorage. His name's Dave Hobby. And James Foog, he talks almost every day to the colonel. It's a lady that runs the Army Corps of Engineers office in Anchorage that actually did all of the technical work.
Okay, so there's a good relationship.
Oh yes, very good relationship. And the same team from the Army Corps of Engineers that did the Donlin permit is doing the Pebble permit. And James ran permitting for Donlin, for Nova Gold Barrick on the Donlin mine, and we hired him when that was finished. And this guy Dave Hobby, when Trump was elected, he had Hobby sent to the White House to work on streamlining permitting process for Trump's infrastructure plans. And Hobby did all of that, but then because Trump didn't get along well enough with the Republicans in the House, couldn't get his infrastructure plans through, so that didn't happen. But Hobby took all that streamlining, and much of it he applied to Pebble. The biggest thing that he did is historically, when you go through permitting, the public or the people interested, they only get to see the document when it's finished. They never get to see all of the detailed information. Hobby, he set up a website for Pebble, and every time they asked us a question, it's called an RFI, request for information, it was published on the website. And every answer we provided was published on the website. And he would tell people, when we have public hearings for 30 days, don't ask me for 60 days, because all the information's there. You go read the information now. You don't get any additional time in public hearings. And so that way you won't be surprised about the outcome. And then once a month, he would hold a public press conference where only press could call in and ask questions. 1 hour, once a month. So he was very transparent on what was going on.
I hear you. That's great. Would you consider the Army Corps or the Corps of the Army is an ally developing the project? They are on our side?
So when you look at statute, the Clean Water Act, it says that the Army Corps of Engineers will issue a permit based on the least environmentally damaging practicable alternative. The law is affirmative that they have to issue a permit based on the least damaging alternative. And that's what drives the ENGO nuts, is because it doesn't say withhold the permit. It doesn't say issue the permit only if there's no damage. It says they will issue a permit based on the least. So, I mean, you may still cause a lot of environmental damage, but if it's the least practical alternative, you get your permit.
We're sharing with our major investors, but we don't want to be completely public at this point. So I made a phone call to the guy who runs the permitting process here in Anchorage, who's become somewhat of a friend. I've known him for 25 years, and said to him, what the hell's going on? And he just kind of laughed.
I can send you a copy of the letter that was the big controversy.
That would be brilliant.
The guy that signed it is Dave Hobby. Well, that's who Tom knows and meets with Dave Hobby. Tom talks to him every week, and that's who Tom called on Saturday to find out, is there anything to this political story?
Nothing is ever pre-approved. I don't want to say that that's the case, because that's just not the way the government works here in America. So nothing is ever pre-approved. But I have sat down with them, shown them what's going to be in the document that I'm going to send to them. They are pleased with what's there. They don't see any problems with what's there. I believe that they're going to approve it.
Okay. But no guarantee, you mean? That's what you're saying?
There's never a guarantee.
But all the signals are pretty positive.
All the signals are very positive.
And your discussions are happening at the highest level of at the highest level of the Army Corps with what's his name? David
Dave Hobby. And Dave is the guy who is the director of regulatory affairs in the Alaska District Corps of Engineers office, and he's the decision maker. And that's who we've been speaking to, yes.
And so essentially what you guys are discussing is that if the compensation plan that you guys are going to present in 10 to 15 days follows what you presented with him a few days ago, there shouldn't be any major sort of comments or ask for changes.
Let me tell you what he said. I'll tell you what he said exactly. This is a guy who sent us a letter, and I'm sure you've seen the letter that outlined what he wanted in the way of a mitigation plan. We went and briefed him on the mitigation plan, and he said to us, this satisfies all of the issues we raised in our letter. So there were two things. There was a letter, that's the letter that you're talking about, and then there was a press release about the letter.
From the Army Corps of Engineers.
From the Army Corps of Engineers. So up several steps. And the Army said that the project could not be approved as it had been presented to the Corps of Engineers. Now, what they meant to say is that we had to comply with the letter, all right? But that's all they meant to say, is that we had to comply with the letter.
Essentially, present a sound mitigation plan. That would be discussed, approved. I mean, just saying that it's not the end of the process.
Well, that's pretty much the end of the process, yeah. And so the Army press release was characterizing the letter. They just did it by choosing poor language, and that was misread by the press. All right, and just to prove that that's correct, about after that, we finally got a guy that runs the Corps of Engineers in Washington, D.C. His name is Ryan Fisher. And Ryan Fisher is the Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Army for Civil Works, which means he's the guy that runs the Corps of Engineers nationwide for Donald Trump. And he said, don't misread the press release. All the press release was doing was talking about the letter. And you can see what the letter says. The letter says if they file a comprehensive mitigation plan that meets the requirements, then they'll be able to get a record of decision.
Why is it that the Army came out with such a statement? Why did they need to do that?
It looks to me like it was written by some dumb press release writer and nobody else looked at it. That's all I can tell.
Do you think it's politically motivated?
I don't. I mean, if it was politically motivated, we wouldn't have been able to get the guy that runs the Corps of Engineers to come in and say, that doesn't matter. He would have never come in and said, it's the letter that you look at, not the press release. If it had been politically motivated.
And typically with the Army Corps of Engineers, if there's something that's going to be out of the ordinary, they try and get us that information as soon as possible. Like this mitigation plan, where we had to go from what was called out of kind, out of watershed mitigation to in kind, in watershed mitigation. As soon as that became the requirement, they let us know, and that was back in June. So that allowed us to put the team into the field and get that work done. So we did have almost two months notice on that. And then we spent with two teams in the field getting all of that work done. So if they'd been unpredictable, then they would not have told us anything to begin with. and we would have had to start the mitigation studies in September. And as it stood, the mitigation studies took about 6 weeks in total in the field.
And was it the same with the northern route when they decided to?
And they gave us a heads up to the northern route before, and they said they gave us the heads up so that we could put documentation in place if we wanted to challenge their decision. And remember, I told you it was we were torn. We'd done all this work on the central, on the ferry alternative, and now we're going the northern corridor, and we were missing one land access agreement on the northern corridor. So we did challenge them. But at the end of the day, the northern corridor is the better route, and it makes it look better for the ultimate litigation against the Army Corps of Engineers. That again, they've made changes. They didn't accept our proposition without any questions. They made us make some changes. Those all look good to the courts when the environmentalists sued the Army Corps of Engineers over the permits, later this year. Ultimately, there's a few decisions that we can't manage, and we have to be able to then manage the change. And the Army Corps of Engineers knows that, and they help us with that by giving us early advice, letting us know, no surprises, and with lots of time.